parking demand, and they're probably where commuters and employees are parking to get into downtown Seattle. Now, these are preliminary recommendations, and we don't have specific streets planned out, but that would be our next step. Now, the statement of legislative intent called out looking at South Lake Union and South Downtown, and after analysis that we did, we really don't think those are appropriate areas for short-term parking meters at this time. In South Downtown, there's really a lack of there's a substantial amount of customer parking demand. Areas where people want to park for 1 or 2 hours. There's also a large amount of free on and off street parking. So, and when Billy talked about spillover, that people can easily avoid the parking meters and park elsewhere, and then the meters would sit empty. And there's also streets without sidewalks, which makes it difficult, pretty much impossible to put the parking meters in. Now, in South Lake Union, there's a tremendous amount of plan development and transportation planning efforts that are going on right now to analyze different street designs. And it really it made it difficult to program parking meter locations at this time. And similarly to South Downtown, there's a tremendous amount of free on-street parking in the area that would make spillover likely. So we would recommend, we are looking more at the areas of Uptown, Belltown, Denny Triangle, First Hill, Pike Pine, and the International District for areas to put the 300 parking meters. In terms of the schedule, our next steps are, if necessary, to work with you to revise the community outreach practices. We also do some further refinement of where the parking meters should go. In spring and summer, depending on the community outreach options, we would do that work. And then the meter design and installation would follow that. So option 1, which was the public notice, would happen pretty quickly. So the meters could be, we could start installation in the summer. Option 3, it takes a little more time to collect the petitions, so that's more of a fall or winter design and installation. And then option 2 is somewhere, in the middle, likely in the fall. Now, Tracy's going to talk about the pay station effort as well.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Why did you choose, or have you chosen the petition process? I thought I heard you say we would use the petition process.
I think they said unless directed by the council.
Directed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We're
That's
talking about using our current
default,
practice unless
right.
there's a change.
Exactly.
Although you have the legal authority to do differently.
Pardon?
You have the legal authority to do differently. Under the code, the Seattle Director of Transportation has the authority to simply
Yes.
implement an area.
As directed by the mayor.
Right.
Okay, I get to talk about the pay station project, which is pretty exciting. It's a technology that's relatively new to North American cities, but it's been around in Europe for several decades now. In January, when we were here to report on the recommendations from the Seattle Parking Management Study, Councilmember Conlon expressed interest in accelerating the pay station project from how we'd originally conceived it. And today I'm happy to report that we have rethought the project approach, and we are taking steps to do just that and accelerate the project. We've already begun working on some of the critical path tasks to enable completion of the procurement process and begin the first phase of pay station installation later this year. Subsequent pay station installation phases in the schedule will depend upon a number of variables, including the financing mechanism that's ultimately chosen, vendor production capabilities, and city staff, various department capacities to keep up with an installation schedule. When compared with standard parking meters, pay stations have the capability to dramatically enhance parking revenues in a number of ways. This includes, we're able to offer the customer expanded payment options with credit cards, smart cards, debit cards. We also, by offering these alternative payment mechanisms, it makes the customer more willing to pay for something they're already using. Oftentimes now you want to be parked for 2 hours, you don't have 8 quarters, you put the 3 in that you have and you take your chances with the remainder of the time. With credit cards, it's very easy to swipe your credit card and push the button that says maximum time, and you pay for 2 hours. Whereas before, you may not have paid for it, and 2, you might select 2 hours when you only need an hour and a half, but you don't want to take the chance. So revenues are enhanced that way. Also, with one of the technologies called pay and display, you eliminate the ability for parkers to piggyback. If you've had to go purchase a receipt from the pay station kiosk, put it on your vehicle, you drive away, the next person who pulls into that parking spot needs to pay for its use. It's not like they could look at the meter and see that there's still time on the meter and come in and piggyback on somebody else's payment. So you get a revenue bump there. We also would be able to take the standard meters that are removed in the pay station areas and redeploy those to some of the new areas that we've been looking at around the city. With the pay station equipment, we also have the ability to extend meter hours more easily. Right now, meters are generally in effect from about 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We could look at future options to extend the meter hours into the evening in areas where there's a lot of restaurant activity. Some of those things we could look at, additional revenue hours on the weekends from now. We also would have the ability to increase and vary the meter rates. Right now, we're pretty much limited by the equipment we have. The cash boxes in them can't hold many more quarters without frequent emptying. So that's another way it helps us. And then finally, with pay stations, you actually have the ability to meter areas for long-term parking uses. So in areas such as Soda, which may not be a prime candidate for short-term meter use because you don't have a lot of short-term customer need, but where you have a lot of all-day parking going on in the city right-of-way, we may be able to put out meters that have 8 or 10-hour parking validation. So that's another way to increase the revenues with pay stations. As with all good parking revenue mechanisms, however, their success and acceptance is dependent upon their ability to also provide substantial parking management benefits. Some of these I've already mentioned, but they include increased customer service by allowing them to use credit cards and debit cards. We also could gain some efficiencies in our business practices, including meter maintenance, revenue collections, and citation disposition. Right now, we have folks who drive around looking for meters that are out of service. With the pay station technology, we would have the capability to have two-way wireless communication. We would receive a signal when one of the meters is out of service. We also could get a signal when the 48-hour notice when the cash box is going to be empty. So instead of having a routine schedule of cash collection, we could do it just in time. And with citation disposition, I think what some of the other cities have found is that sometimes you have fewer disputes. When you walk back to your car and the parking enforcement officer is writing the ticket, your parking validation, if you have a pay and display, says clearly what time it's expired. Right. And so there's a lot less confrontation in some cities have found. Excuse me. We also would have the ability to improve our financial reporting and auditing capabilities. We'd have a better tracking mechanism of where and how the meters are collecting revenue, be able to look at trends, have some standardized report, and use those as management tools. We also have the potential to address a number of problematic operational issues, such as long-term use. And we'd also like to look at whether or not this is a technology that can help us address some of the long-term parking use by folks with accessible placards in their car. We're not sure if there's an application, but it's one of the issues we're confronted with, and we'd like to explore that with this technology. There's also a non-parking benefit that these provide, and it's pretty dramatic if you go down to the city of Portland or some other city, and that is sort of the streetscape enhancement. Freeing up about 3 feet of sidewalk space is pretty dramatic in terms of pedestrian use and other sidewalk activities that can take place instead. So as we move to the pay station technology, we would also be positioning the city to take advantage of future technology enhancements. Typically, the kiosks are modular in components, and we could look to future ways to use them. Smart cards right now are being talked about primarily just in terms of paying for parking. We would have the future capacity to integrate it with using the same smart card to pay for parking, or to pay for transit use. I think the Muni Courts is interested in looking at, could you use a smart card to pay for your citation, your fine there. There are numerous examples that you could use the same pay card technology to pay with.
Put your property taxes on it?
Exactly. I think one of the other things, I know Portland is looking to this, is that the kiosk being out there on the street, they're looking to the future where that could be an information kiosk for the public. You could get maps up on it and see, provide directions where we want to go. I mean, conceivably, you could look at putting transit schedules up there as well.
Sure. Put a printer on it and people could pay money and print a map.
So by accelerating our efforts to strategically invest in pay stations this year, We hope to capitalize on the growing public interest in this new technology, and in the process, we plan to create a success story from both a parking revenue and a parking management perspective over the next several years.
Great. Is that all? Great. Well, I have a number of questions. I'm sure my colleagues do too. So, all right. Let me first start off by asking about the areas that you're proposing for top candidate areas for new meters. Do you have an idea of how many spaces you would be metering in each one of those areas in a ballpark?
Well, we've talked about installing about 300 meters that we have. And so we still have to figure out where exactly within those they would go. We haven't made that.
So you haven't made a decision that there's only 300 spaces in those 4 areas. It could very well be more than that.
Yes, that's quite possible.
So what you're saying is you now have 300 meters that you want to install, but can you buy some new meters? I mean, let's suppose that you go do the evaluation of those 4 areas and you discover that there's 400 or 500 spaces that you would like to meter. This is an option then to acquire additional meters or to use meters displaced by the pay station technologies.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's what we would look at is when we take the meters out with the pay station to redeploy them in, this would be the areas we would put them.
Is it kind of your philosophy at this point that we're not going to invest in new meters except the pay stations, so that basically we'll be putting new meters in as the pay stations replace old meters? Is that essentially where we're looking at? Well, the one concern I have about that is the fact that we have a number of meters that are fairly obsolete at this time, the old sort of mechanical meters. And so as those go out, you probably don't want to repost them anywhere.
No, and there are about 4,000 of those or so.
Yeah. So how fast can we get pay stations in? How many spaces can we cover?
Well, just by example, the city of Portland is looking to replace about 95% of their 7,000 standard meters with pay stations. They originally started out with a 5-year schedule, but they've been so successful that they've accelerated it to a 2-year implementation schedule. We have about 8,700 or so metered spaces in the city right now, and it probably does not make sense to replace all of those. I don't know if we would reach the 95% target that the city of Portland's striving for, but there are economies of scale that need to be achieved in certain areas. But we'll be looking at that. I think the main determinant of the schedule will actually be the financing mechanism that's chosen to fund and keep the process moving. We'll look at a range of options from, some debt financing to the vendor,
Right.
The vendor carrying the paper on it, sort of lease to own, pay them back out of revenues type thing. We'll have to look at a wide range of financing mechanisms.
Well, I'm just going to give you a hypothetical number.
Businesses. We've heard from some businesses that the parking restrictions would actually be okay for them because they have off-street parking. And as we'll hear later, the Aurora Merchants Association does not support doing these parking restrictions. I wanted to talk a little bit about the parking data that's been collected. We worked in partnership with King County Metro and a consultant to take a look at all the parking use on Aurora, on the side streets, and in the current off-street parking lots that businesses have. When we analyzed all of that data, it was determined by the consultant that we could accommodate the displaced vehicles on Aurora on the side streets or the off-street parking lots within a couple blocks of where that car was currently parked on Aurora. And what this map shows you is the parking use on Aurora. We broke it up into percentages from 0 to 25% is the green areas, and that's the percentage of people parking on Aurora. The yellow is 50 to 74%, and the green is 25 to 49%, the yellow is 50 to 74%, and the red is over 75%. And as you can see, there are only a couple of spots where the parking use on Aurora is over 75%. And just to put that in context, 85 to 90% is typically what we consider to be, full parking on Aurora. So we've used a slightly conservative estimate in terms of where we've identified that there are key, what we're calling hotspot locations, where the most parking is being used on Aurora. And what we've been doing is looking block by block where those hotspots are and identifying and working with the businesses what are their parking needs and how might we accommodate what their parking needs are. So for instance, when I was out there 2 weeks ago, there was a medical office that closes at 5, and right across the street, there was a restaurant. And so there's a possibility that that restaurant could use the parking in that medical office after 5, and that's 13 parking spaces that, you know, there could be a shared parking arrangement between those two businesses. So it's those types of opportunities that we've been working with businesses and trying to identify in the corridor, specifically where there is a slightly higher use of the parking on Aurora. So that's some of what we've been doing and analyzing. I wanted to go a little bit more into some of the other factors. That's the parking use. This slide shows what observed transit delay is. As you can see in the morning peak, on average, the bus is taking 8 minutes to go through this corridor, but in the evening, it's taking 9.3 minutes. So generally, it's about losing about a minute during this time. To compare, traffic, just general purpose traffic, is also losing roughly 2 to 3 minutes in the evening during this time. And so what I'm trying to explain with all of these different factors and different slides is there's competing interests for the public right-of-way, for the space on the corridor, and what we need to weigh is how many people are parking on Aurora versus how many people are using transit and how many people are driving on Aurora, and those were some of the things that we considered.
Could you explain to me how you weigh those?
I think that it wasn't necessarily a specific, you know, this is worth this is worth that. It was more looking at all of them together.
But aren't you weighing apples and oranges? I mean, if I'm parked on Aurora, I'm there for a reason, or did I drive to Aurora and park on Aurora to take the bus? But if I'm riding the bus, maybe I'm coming from Shoreline to downtown or downtown to someplace else, so that I'm not sure how you mean you weigh them.
One thing I can clarify is that when we're looking at, for example, the number of parking spaces used, we're also looking at, is there nearby either off-street parking or shared parking, as Therese mentioned, that can accommodate the number of people that are actually parking on that, and how does that compare to the amount of delay that a transit rider or traffic is in that corridor? So it's making those the trade-offs in terms of we have a limited right-of-way, and given how much the parking is being used in comparison to the potential in terms of the need for moving people, balancing those.
Do you have a potential number of boardings per stop?
And yes, we have looked at
I think that'd be
that type of
interesting
information.
We can provide that information.
Okay.
I mean, it seems to me you're looking at competing interests, the number of people on the bus, and maybe the number of boardings would have much more applicability to the competition with the percentage of people parked. I mean, I don't know.
We have a graph showing that information at one point on Aurora, on an 85th. It's in the booklet that we gave you. It looks like this.
Okay, oh, good, okay.
We also have a map for you.
Yeah, I think
You'd like to see
If you can maybe wrap up in just a minute. And then
Yes,
we're gonna
so
move
just
the
to wrap up, we've met with hundreds of businesses and community members up and down the corridor. We've held 2 open houses and had numerous community council presentations that we've done as well. So we've been out there talking to as many people as would be willing to talk to us. And we've heard mixed reviews, I think, as you probably have as well. So I just wanted to give you a sense of some of the comments that we've been receiving. Some people feel we should take all the parking off Aurora all the time. Some people feel we should, you know, keep the parking on Aurora. And then we've heard, you know, comments in between. So I just wanted to give you a sense of all the various comments we've been hearing, and then also some of our responses. So for instance, we originally were thinking that we'd restrict the parking from 3 to 7 p.m. as is the current restriction northbound. But after hearing that there were some concerns for the dinner time crowd for the restaurants, we considered restricting it just until 6 p.m. So that was a response to some of the concerns that we heard. We also heard about the bus lane, the business access and transit lane going northbound. I think you heard that in the public comments earlier. And we're addressing some of the signage and safety issues with that lane. So I won't go into too much more detail, but you have it in your folders in terms of all the comments and how we're responding to the community and the businesses. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I would like now to give the opportunity for the Merchants Association to give their comments.
Well, thank you very much for hearing us. Our president, Dave Pryor, is giving a speech in Nashville this afternoon, and he's doesn't send his apologies. He's coming back tonight, hopefully. And maybe he'll bring a piece of the shuttle with him or something, who knows. Over the 120-year history of Aurora Avenue, the area from Green Lake to the city of Seattle has evolved into be the second largest area of commerce in the city. Our gross sales exceed $1 billion a year. The amount of money that is remitted back from that area to the city budget equals $23 million a year. That's a huge amount of money before we start making some decision to destroy the business community along that avenue. But we're here primarily to protest the removal of the parking in the southbound lanes for several reasons. The restrictions that are in force in the afternoon on the northbound lanes from 3 to 7, we are all agreeable with. In fact, we helped extend it. It moves the traffic out of the city, and that's the object of what it's supposed to do. Remember that we are the second largest area in the city for moving traffic north-south, and we are the alternate to I-5. So we do have and perform a very crucial thing in helping move traffic. There are also restrictions in the morning in the southbound lanes, as you know, from 6 a.m. to 9 to assist traffic to flow into the city. They're in cooperation with our businesses. We've all learned to live with them. But the decision to remove parking for what seems like a very short period of time, 3 to 6, in the evening southbound lanes is not in the best interest of the city, and it is certainly a misguided decision. We have already suffered out on Aurora this year, 26 businesses. That's in the last 9 months. Our projections are showing that these 26, it isn't projections, it's facts, show that 12 of those 26 moved out of the city. 10 of them closed. 4 moved to unknown locations. In reviewing the proposal to just remove parking for what appears at first glance a short 3-hour period, we find that that will affect 115 more businesses who employ 400 people. So we're talking about a total of 141 businesses that will be eliminated with approximately 500 job losses. Now, the business people in this room, as myself, who is a business person, I'm an optimist. And if you ask any one of them, they'll say, we'll survive. But we as business people know they will not survive. Their business will be down, they will hang on for a year or two, but they will be gone. And if that is the object of what the city policy is, in order to see and facilitate the lengthening of that bus route, giving that bus route priority over businesses and over people and over jobs, then have at it.
Can I just ask, the 115 businesses you cite, is that in both of the areas or just in the area where the southbound?
Only in the area from 72nd to 110th.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing I wanted to clarify is that's the same area on the map there where we looked at which businesses had off-street parking of those.
Great, thank you.
The idea that the business people and their customers are going to park a block or two away and walk to the business is absolutely, for anyone who's in business, laughable. And it's unfortunate that there isn't more business experience at this table. It's absolutely ludicrous. The first thing you do when you try to start a business is look for location and parking. You have one or not the other, but you cannot have just location, no parking, or parking, no location. So it's very, very important. The traffic statistics that are given to us by our own Seattle Department of Transportation do not even prove the need for the removal of this parking. The northbound and southbound traffic flows are not even close. They're not even equal in the afternoon time. In fact, the northbound traffic flows illustrates more of a need for a third general purpose lane northbound in the afternoon rather than another general purpose lane going south. Now, things that have been done recently have caused part of the backup problems on Aurora, one of which is the extension of the timing of the light at 85th and Aurora for the east-west diversion of traffic off of the freeway. That light lengthening time was extended. The north-south light time was shortened, but no one ever seems to be able to want to mention that. The improved traffic flows east-west certainly helped getting traffic moving into the western part of the city, out to Ballard and to Broadview and into Crown Hill, but it just certainly didn't help north-south traffic flows. At the same time, Metro is making claims of riderships that does not justify removing the parking. There's no funding for Metro to add buses to this one route that we have on Aurora. One bus route, the 358. And there's no funding for Metro to make improvements to their shelters. In fact, the King County Council is quite surprised to even hear that this is being contemplated. Southbound at 4 p.m., there are 100 riders on the bus, and that number steadily decreases during the evening. There's a great, huge difference in the amount of people